Chairman Helkias is unable to be here this evening. First order of business will be, is anyone willing and able to elevate themselves to chairperson for the evening? First person to speak, it's the designation. There are no takers. I have received special dispensation from legal to chair the meeting. Second. Anyone want to chair? We have everything lined up for you. And you'll get a special email thank you from me tomorrow.
More candy. It's not that I don't want to, I don't know how.
I agree. I feel like that's all I.
Okay, point of order. We will have everyone take the chairperson training. So this does not happen again. Okay,
With the roll call,
yes.
Michelle Ekman,
Present.
Abbas Bikabarawala, Bill Schreiber,
Yes, here.
Louis Alcaeus is absent. Zain Otawala, not here. Nagaranath Rajakumar, here. James Fuller.
Here.
Ruba Natarajan, here. Roger Blomquist is absent. And Nate Wilson is absent.
Okay. Do we have anyone for public forum?
Yes, we have
Perfect.
Tim Ferrito.
Okay, let me just read my handy dandy sheet here and then I will turn you loose, Mr. Ferrito. The next order of business is public forum. As we start the public forum, I'd like to remind everyone of the citizen participation rules in the city's municipal code for speaking at meetings. Speakers will be called upon to speak in the order they signed up on the sheet. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make their comments. Speakers are asked to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Speakers should stay on topic and be cognizant of their words. Personal attacks on board members, staff, or other speakers or members of the audience are not allowed. If inappropriate language or comments are expressed during this meeting, you will be asked immediately to stop commenting. Also, for audience members, there's no cheering and no jeering. Actions such as applauding, cheering, or booing during or at the conclusion of any remarks made by the speaker are not allowed. Please call the first speaker.
Tim Ferrito.
So where do I go?
Wherever you'd like.
Have a class, mister.
Go up there. Sit down. Tim Ferrito, Naperville resident. I'm going to talk about solar install capacity. Recently, there has been increased discussion about solar install capacity, much of it driven by pending expiration of federal tax credits. What is often left out of this discussion is that install capacity alone tells us very little unless it is evaluated alongside capacity factor and effective load carrying capacity, or ELCC. Solar generation in the PJM interconnection grid has both a low capacity factor and a declining ELCC. In practical terms, solar produces energy intermittently and contributes relatively little reliable capacity when the grid needs it the most. Put this into perspective, consider Prairie State Energy Campus, a 1,600 megawatt power plant. If the goal were only to replace Prairie State's annual energy production, it would require roughly 7,700 megawatts of solar capacity, covering up to 58,000 acres. But grid operators are not focused on energy alone. Both PJM and MISO increasingly require reliable capacity. According to PJM's forward assessment, solar's ELCC is projected to decline from about 11% today to roughly 7% in 2028. At that level, replacing Prairie State's reliable capacity would require 19,000 megawatts of solar, covering an approximate area the size of Chicago. Does this mean solar should not be part of the energy mix? No. It clearly shows that solar alone cannot solve the grid reliability challenges, especially as electricity demand continues to grow. I'll close with one final point. Lazar does a cost affirming intermittent analysis. For the 2025 assessment, they estimated unsubsidized costs for a new solar farm in PGM at $74 per megawatt hour. To make the energy reliable, Lazar adds roughly $68 per megawatt hour for firming intermittency, bringing the total to about $142 per megawatt hour. Their solar plus battery option is even higher. These are real system costs that grids are now beginning to account for through ELCC and capacity market reforms. The key takeaway is simple: installed solar capacity does not equal reliable power. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public forum speakers?
Nope.
Not have any public forum speakers. At this time, we will receive a presentation from Mr. Stark.
Go with the old business and move the meeting minutes open. From November 6th.
I was gonna bring that up.
Mr. Stark, Chairman.
We'll hold it.
At this point, entertain a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes on from November 6, 2025's PUAB meeting.
Motion to approve.
I have an objection. Not a big deal, but under item 3, receive PUAB 2025 annual report. Says a motion was made by Schreiber, seconded by Ackman. Motion passed with Millard dissenting. I actually went back and looked at the recording because I could miss things like this, but I did not dissent to the PUAB 2025 annual report.
We'll make that. Oh. Okay, we'll make that change. Are you still okay with?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll need a second. Does it have to be roll call or does it roll call?
Yes. So motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 6th, 2025. Michelle Ackman?
With that modification,
Yes.
I motion.
Abbas? Phil? Yes. Lou's not here. Is Zane available? Zane, okay, you don't get to vote, so
Not voting.
I would go to James and Rupa.
Yes.
Roger is not here. So motion is passed.
Now we will move to new business. The moment you've been waiting for, Mr. Stark.
And I'm just curious, if a bunch of people didn't come tonight instead of them.
I would answer that however you would like.
Very well said. Okay, I'm here to present what the modeling team has accomplished. And I'll start with the first slide next. And these are the things that I'm going to cover. So why did we form the team? Who are the members? What have we accomplished? I also will have a break here of 16 minutes to show you a fascinating podcast that summarizes what we've learned as a team. And then end it with talking about the next steps. So why did we form the modeling team? And I'll just summarize some of the things and you can read that. But initially CES, was the main consultant, recommended that we renew with IMEA, but they didn't quantify anything. They didn't give what the cost of an MDR was. They said because of the MDR, they didn't quantify that. They didn't quantify what we'd be giving up with peak shaving. They just said you should do that. So that was one red mark against them. Then later, they did something fascinating. to me anyway, at the city council presentation. And in the last minute of the presentation, they presented some charts that were hard to read that show what we could do for getting accumulating effects for carbon reduction if we did an MDR. But if you looked at the chart for the cost, the MDR they used correctly at the time, the estimated cost for new nuclear and Lazard levelized cost of energy was $190 per megawatt hour. They used that. They made a bunch of other assumptions. And basically, if you read the unlabeled graphs, it looked like roughly a 75% increase in cost index, which they didn't define. I went back and did a quick model of it, and it looked like I could get up to about $46 million a year that would cost for 10% MDR with new nuclear. I also couldn't figure out some of their other assumptions. I found a number of potential costs. And that was the point where I raised the issue that said we can do way better. And so we agreed, working through Brian, to form the modeling team. And that's why we got started. Next one. Okay, so the members, the current members are Brian and myself. We have two members of staff, Olga and Mark, Jim Farrar, Phil Schreiber, and then Graham Moran, who's not here, but Tim Frito, who is here. So these are the current members of the modeling team. Next slide. This was our assignment from Brian, so he was our boss in all this. And so he asked us to analyze the cost of our current power supply and then determine three options that balance the carbon emissions and cost. Basically saying, let's evaluate the MDRs. And then also determine the cost benefit of battery storage. So that was our overall assignment. Next slide. And for the MDR, the modeling approach was basically fairly simple. Because once we confirmed through Brian that we were required to meet 100% of our requirements with IMEA before we would then add on to it the MDR. So therefore, we only needed to first determine the cost of purchasing the energy, capacity, and the effects. And that was done through the PPA process for Brian. And then the challenging part, was to determine what we could get for immediately selling all of that energy capacity. So we wouldn't use any of that. We'd sell it right away. And we had to get a forecast for energy and capacity pricing, in this case for a 10-year period. And then it's a simple case of subtracting those two numbers and getting the net cost. That was our overall approach to this. Next slide. And so this is what the team has achieved so far. There's a lot of things behind this, but I'll just summarize some big things. We determined the major trends affecting energy and capacity prices. And I would say here, the current state of deep research AI is phenomenal. Does for qualitative things, it's really, really good now. It's improved a lot in the years since I started using it. It's really good now. Second of all, because we weren't certain about the ability of AI to model what we needed, we used Graham to develop a standalone or a spreadsheet model, traditional way, and compared the two, model from AI, and turned out that they were a match. So we were quite confident that AI could model what we needed. We then developed a 10-year forecast for energy capacity pricing based on 10,000 iterations on a Carlos simulation. And we prepared a MDR net cost estimate for a 10-year nuclear PPA. And I'm going to show that tonight. So this was not used by City Council, but we're certainly going to share it. And our recommendation is these are the kinds of things we would use in the future for future decisions. And we also determined that it would be useful to have an outside professional opinion so that we could develop strong confidence that it was the right level of analysis. Next slide. Okay, so, other than a briefing I did with Scott Worley yesterday, you're the first group to see this. It's kind of a busy slide here, but this is the output, and then for the team members, notice at the very top, I say for a $95 megawatt hour price. So at the very top, that was a change from when we started with. We started with $85, but that was built based on a 2024 Constellation deal with the GSA. So it was older. And when I did updated analysis from Gemini, they gave me a range for 95 was about the middle point. And also I got a secret handshake from Brian that 95 was a lot closer. So that's the price that we used in the model to determine what our cost would be for purchasing the energy capacity defects. And then we use the output of the work that for the 10,000 iterations. And in the center column there, you see a base case. So this is like a Gaussian distribution. So in the middle point is the base case that we would use, as I refer to. And based on the base case with that new number of $95, the average cost is $12.9 million a year for purchasing a 10-year nuclear, but not new nuclear, the nuclear one with Constellation, with the 10% capacity and roughly 25% of energy. If we double that, it just doubles those numbers. So we asked for 20% as one of the options. You could just double that, you get $25.8 million. Let me stop here and see if anybody has any questions. Oh, the other thing is on either side are the tails of the Gaussian distribution. And where it says a high case, that refers to if the prices for energy capacity go up a lot, we actually can sell at a higher price and our net costs go down. And the reverse is true on the other side. You can see the range there for the model. I ran the same thing in both Gemini and with ChatGPT and got the same results now. So let me stop here and see if anybody has any questions over this.
Just want to double check if everybody knows what this MTR stands for, because maybe some people.
Oh,
don't know.
anybody, so that's a membership, member directed resource clause, which allows Naperville to purchase additional energy capacity beyond our full requirements. And the reason we would do that is because we have to sell it right away, would be because of the energy credits we get for them.
Just.
Okay. So now I'm about to take a brief nap because I play a 16-minute video. A number of people have seen this already. Just a couple of comments, and my past work for anything big like this, I identify that it's really important periodically to stop and assess how you've done and learn what's working and what's not working. So what you're going to see is what we've learned, which is actually way more than I thought we were going to be able to when you see the upcoming video. So at this point,
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are trying to crack open what really sounds like the ultimate black box in public finance. We are talking about how a utility forecasts the long-term cost of electricity, and this isn't next month's bill. This is planning for the next decade.
Is a black box.
Yeah.
And we're not just looking at big national trends today. We are drilling down into a very specific 5-step process. It's the one used by the Naperville Electric Utility Modeling Team.
Okay.
Their whole job is forecasting energy and capacity prices 10 years out, right at their specific spot in the huge PJM market that Naperville noted.
And the stakes here are just obviously huge. When you're planning a decade of investments of rate structures for a whole city, you really can't afford to be wrong. What's making this so much harder now than, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
It's just a perfect storm, really. You've got pressure coming from both sides, supply and demand. On the demand side, you have this massive, rapid increase in energy use. It's driven by, vehicle electrification, new heat pumps, and maybe most critically, just this hyper aggressive expansion of data centers.
I did see that in the source material that Northern Illinois is becoming this major hub for data centers. How does that actually show up in a model for a place like Naperville?
It completely changes the game locally. Across the whole PJM region, we're seeing this unprecedented 2 to 3% load growth every single year.
Wow.
And a huge chunk of that is concentrated right there in that Northern Illinois area. So this local pressure, it forces the model to deal with very real transmission bottlenecks, which directly affects the price at that one specific node.
And then on the supply side, it's the exact opposite problem. It's contracting fast and being replaced very slowly.
Exactly. You've got this challenge of retiring fossil fuel plants really quickly, either for regulatory or economic reasons. And that's just slamming right into this incredibly slow interconnection queue for new renewables.
So the solar, the wind, the batteries, they just can't get online fast enough.
Not nearly fast enough to replace what's leaving. And then you add these other pressures, like PJM doesn't even count solar as 100% reliable capacity.
No, great. The accreditation ratings.
And you have shifting state laws like the Illinois Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, CEJA.
Yeah.
It's a chaotic mix. The model has to predict regulatory outcomes right alongside the market ones.
Okay, so that really clarifies the scale of the challenge. The mission here is to turn all that chaos and risk into a reliable roadmap. The sources say they do this with a really structured 5-step process. It combines AI research, pretty rigorous math, and then crucially, human oversight at the end.
That structure is the only way these forecasts can hold up over 10 years. It's a system, a system for identifying, quantifying, simulating, and then auditing all those risks.
So let's start with step 1, AI deep research. It's interesting to me that the first step isn't crunching numbers at all. It's homework. Using AI agents to identify these core known unknowns, the big factors you have to model over the decade.
What's fascinating is the AI acts like an intelligence gathering team first. It figures out what variables are going to dominate the conversation for the next 10 years before they even build the math engine. And for Naperville, the AI flagged 4 factors that are just completely dominating the risk profile.
We touched on the first one, but let's give it the weight it deserves. Load growth from data centers. Why is that specific kind of demand so hard to model?
Well, because data centers don't grow in a straight line. They often show up as these massive discrete announcements, a new corporate campus, that needs hundreds of megawatts, and it creates this instant, unexpected jump in projected demand.
Right.
So if the utility gets the probability or the timing of those spikes wrong, their entire capacity plan can just fall apart. That's the source of that unprecedented growth. It's concentrated risk.
And factor 2 sounds like the main reliability risk. Resource adequacy, or what you call the retirement gap.
It is. It's the single biggest reliability challenge that PJM is facing. You have this push to retire fossil fuel plants running head on into the bureaucracy of that interconnection queue. It can take years for a new solar farm to get approval and actually connect. That gap, the period where demand is up and reliable supply is down, that's a massive quantifiable risk that becomes the foundation of the forecast.
And while the types of generators are changing, factor 3 is a reminder that what sets the price hasn't really changed yet.
That's the thing. It's the persistent volatility of natural gas. Even with more renewables, the system is still largely balanced by gas plants. So the model has to aggressively forecast Henry Hub natural gas prices, because that's still what sets the marginal energy price, the cost of that next unit of electricity. If gas prices spike, the whole market usually follows.
Okay, and the last one, factor 4, policy shift risk. You mentioned CEJ in Illinois. What does it actually mean for a model to account for legislation?
It means the AI is tracking the real world market impacts of state level rules. So CEJA, for instance, it sets specific goals for renewables. It incentivizes certain types of generation. The model can't just assume generators act on pure economics anymore. It has to know that a solar farm might only be viable because of CEJ, which shifts the whole supply curve compared to, say, a neighboring state without that law. You have to model the political physics too.
That sets the stage perfectly for step 2, building the Python engine. So the AI has defined the battlefield. Now the team has to build a model to simulate thousands of possible futures. This isn't just guessing a price, it's simulating all these different scenarios.
Exactly. And the architecture here is where the real math sophistication comes in, because you need specialized models for the different behaviors of energy prices versus capacity prices. They just don't act the same.
Okay, let's start with energy prices. These are the ones that are wildly volatile, right? They spike in a heat wave, they can crash overnight. How do you model that over a decade and get a number that makes any sense?
For the energy itself, the actual electricity, the team uses something called a mean reversion process. Best way to think about it is like a rubber band. Price might spike up sharply, that's your heat wave. But the model assumes that there's a fundamental cost to produce electricity. So competitive forces will always, eventually, pull that price back down to that long-term average.
So the mean reversion model is critical because otherwise you might just predict prices going up forever after a shock, which we know doesn't happen. It assumes things eventually return to normal, economically speaking.
Exactly. It recognizes that short-term scarcity doesn't change the long-term equilibrium. So that handles the commodity, the electrons on the wire.
But capacity is different. It's the insurance policy, is what utilities pay to make sure plants are ready to go, even if they don't run. Why can't you just use mean reversion for that too?
Because capacity markets are fundamentally different. They don't smoothly revert. They move in these big, discrete jumps. Think of it like a contract. When PJM holds its big annual auction, the new price that clears instantly sets the value for the next few years. Or if a big rule changes, the whole price structure can just get shocked overnight.
So you need a non-smooth model to capture those jumps. The jump diffusion model. That makes a lot of sense. You're modeling a sudden institutional shock, not a continuous physical one.
Precisely. And here's the absolute key. Both of these models, the one for energy and the one for capacity, they both need a fixed point, a theoretical ceiling. And in PJM, that anchor is the cost of new entry, or cone.
This sounds like the concept that holds the entire structure together. So what is cone and why is it so important?
Cone is the linchpin. It's the hypothetical price that is just high enough to convince someone to actually build a brand new power plant. In a market where supply is tight, capacity prices will naturally drift up towards that cone ceiling. If they cross it, it's a huge signal to investors that says, build here. It acts as a gravitational pull on prices.
It's the ultimate reality check on price escalation, the long-term ceiling. Okay, so we've defined the variables in step one. We've built the math engine in step two. Step three is where they actually run the forecast, the Monte Carlo simulation. And I love this quote. One forecast is a guess. 10,000 forecasts is a statistical reality.
That's absolutely right. They run that Python script 10,000 separate times. And in each of those runs, the model is shaking things up. It's varying all those inputs we talked about, weather, gas prices, how many plants are offline, even how fast data centers get built.
So if I'm a planner at the utility, why do I need 10,000 different prices for the year 2030? Don't I just want one number for my budget? What's the real value in all those runs?
The value is finding the tail risk. See, when you run 10,000 scenarios, you get a distribution, like a bell curve of possibilities. The average price in the middle is helpful, but it's actually dangerous to budget for.
Because if you budget for the average, you're going to be wrong half the time.
Exactly. You'll be over budget half the time. And for a utility, that means financial pain. It means emergency rate hikes. The critical number the Naperville team needs is the 95th percentile. That's their calculated worst case scenario. It tells the procurement team the highest likely cost they'll have to pay so they can budget and hedge against that specific outcome.
Knowing your maximum realistic risk is much more valuable than knowing your average. But running 10,000 simulations that cover all the possibilities, like high gas prices and a lot of plant outages at the same time, that sounds hugely complex.
It is. And that's why they use an efficiency hack to make it work. It's called Latin hypercube sampling. You just use pure random numbers. You get a lot of clustering around the average. Latin hypercube sampling forces the model to systematically cover the entire range of all the inputs.
So instead of throwing 10,000 darts and hoping a few randomly hit the edges of the board, you're forcing the darts to spread out perfectly across the whole surface.
That's a perfect analogy. You make sure you are testing those really improbable but still possible edge cases, the high risk combinations, without having to run, a million simulations. It makes the 10,000 runs statistically powerful.
Which brings us to step four, and this is where it gets really interesting because it becomes a feedback loop. The AI doesn't just build the model and run it, it then audits its own work. They call it automated redlining.
It's a critical quality assurance step. You have this powerful statistical output, but now you have to ask, does it actually align with what's happening in the real market? So the AI agent does these validation checks before any human even sees the results.
Why does the math need checking? I mean, aren't 10,000 perfect simulations correct by definition?
It's mathematically correct based on the inputs, sure, but the inputs themselves might have missed a subtle real-world constraint. The AI runs three key checks. First, it looks at basis risk.
And basis risk, that's the price difference between a big regional hub and the specific Naperville node, right?
Exactly. The final price at the utility is affected by local congestion and things like that. If the simulation showed the price spread between the main hub and Naperville is widening in a way that doesn't match history, it suggests the model might be getting local congestion wrong. AI flags it.
That's a great real world check. What's the second one?
It checks for parameter drift. Remember the mean reversion model for energy prices? The idea that prices snap back to an anchor? The AI verifies that the speed at which the model snaps back isn't set too fast compared to how markets actually behave.
And what's the danger there if it reverts too quickly?
If it reverts too fast, it artificially smooths out the risk. It basically tells the utility, don't worry, that price spike will vanish instantly. But in the real world, spikes can last for weeks. The AI flags a model that might be hiding the true price exposure.
And the third check, I'm guessing, has to deal with all those regulatory shocks we discussed.
Precisely. It's called regulatory alignment. The AI ensures the forecast reflects the latest PJM rule changes, like their capacity performance rules. And crucially, it checks the forecast against recent real-world auction results. For example, if the model is predicting really low capacity prices, the AI will redline that if it doesn't make sense in the context of the recent record high auction results we've actually seen. The math has to respect reality.
So the output is this red line report. It's basically a list of places where the stats might be clashing with known market facts, and it needs a human to take a look.
Which brings us to the final step, step 5, where the humans take over. The modeling team reviews that red line report and provides that last essential sanity check. Their philosophy says it all. AI provides the scale, humans provide the sanity check.
So what can the human team bring to the table that 10,000 simulations and an AI auditor can't?
Foresight on things you can't really quantify. The AI can model the probability of a power plant outage, sure, but it takes human judgment to gauge the political will behind a new transmission project, or the real likelihood that a utility will get approval to retire a coal plant early. Those big macro changes can't be perfectly captured by the math. So the team evaluates the whole forecast and makes these strategic adjustments based on that kind of non-quantifiable intelligence.
So they're always checking their internal model against what's happening in the outside world.
They absolutely are.
Yeah.
And the team also decides if they need to bring in more outside experts. Depending on the complexity or just the sheer amount of money involved, they might get additional forecasts from specialized firms. The sources mention companies like Hitachi Energy, Consulting, Ascend Analytics. They use that high-level expertise to double-check their own findings.
That adds a huge layer of confidence. So once that review is done, the adjustments are made, what happens to the final product?
It stops being just a forecast. It's finalized as a critical decision support tool, and it's used directly for the utility's most important financial decisions. It informs their annual budget, their rate setting for customers, and very importantly, their hedging strategies. The financial tools they use to protect against that tail risk we found way back in the Monte Carlo step. It's the foundation of their financial planning.
What a process. From this huge, complex mountain of variables data center demand in Illinois, the retirement gap, state laws like CEJ, this 5-step process turns it all into a clear 10-year roadmap. It really is about letting the AI do the heavy statistical lifting so the human experts can focus their judgment where the market might defy the math.
It ensures they aren't just hoping for an average year. They're actively planning for the highest realistic cost they might face. It turns all that uncertainty into manageable risk.
And what we've really learned here is that this whole complex machine, especially for capacity prices, it relies on that one concept, the cost of new entry or cone, to be a stable theoretical anchor. It's the ceiling the price can't rationally cross.
That cone calculation is the bedrock. It's the core assumption.
So here's the final thought for you to think about. What happens to the reliability of this whole 10-year forecast if that cone anchor suddenly becomes unstable? For instance, what if global supply chain costs for solar panels or batteries shift dramatically? Or what if massive new government subsidies just completely change the actual cost of building a new generator? The cone calculation itself would be fundamentally altered. If that foundation, the true cost of building the next plant, starts to shift unexpectedly, how does that shake the entire forecasting structure for the next decade?
If that core economic driver changes, you're right. The predictive power of both models, mean reversion and jump diffusion, need a complete strategic reset. That's a fascinating thought, a potential shift at the very foundation of the forecast.
We appreciate you diving deep with us into the technical roadmap of long-term energy pricing. We'll see you next time.
Just a couple more slides now. Okay, so what's our overall assessment? And you can read that, but I'll just give you some additional summary. We ended up with something different than what I expected. I expected that we'd be facing some noticeable limitations of AI in the sense that AI would, when they didn't have a clear data point to use, would sometimes take their best guess. And so that was called hallucinating and so on. And so what I initially thought was, well, we get the best we could out of AI, and then we'd have the team do a overall assessment. We decide if we needed outside people. But what I found in the process is AI is phenomenal at writing code, and we picked Python. It's the best code system, programming system for this. And instead of having AI fill in the blanks, AI would write the code, and we could run it just as the outside companies do when they do their machine learning. So we were able to do that. We have at least a few data points right now. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with what we've learned. But we're not there yet. So to reach the next level, we need some outside input. And the team identified 3 pretty high quality forecasting companies. And our recommendation is we pick one of those to assess what we've done so we can compare the two and see if it's as good as we think it is or if there's a big gap. So that's one next step. What I would add to that is I think we can use this as an opportunity, depending on who we select, to also help us evaluate other things we should be considering for future efforts within for our electricity approach. And then for next support for modeling, Brian has a list of things that he wants to work on soon. And that would include evaluating a battery energy storage system, demand response program design and valuation, and a virtual power plant supported by the DEMS system that's coming up in 2027, is it? So those seem to be the 3 next areas. I would add to that, if city council reached a point where they want to develop a strategy or have us develop a strategy, there would be a lot of other things that would be added to the whole modeling team. Let me stop here and take questions.
Small question, maybe it's better, Brian. Terms online 2027. You have a quarter or month that you're forecasting?
I don't. We signed the contract in December.
Yes. Okay.
And DERM stands for
Distributed
Energy Resource Management System. Other questions?
Kind of like a bigger picture question, but like on the slide right before this, talking about the long-term electricity strategy, like, is that, Brian, like how much of that is in your control, like is the utility versus like the direction you're getting from council? Like, how do we, I guess, what's the plan for the long-term electricity strategy? Like, is there like
Council directed us to pause.
any future electricity strategy, the
That's right.
long-term?
That's correct.
So, but let me add my own view.
Mhm.
So I'm not certain that's a clear decision. And for the last 14 months, I've been asking the question, why can't we define what we're trying to achieve? Of all the things that you would have in a good strategy, well, why don't we have those things to answer defining what we're trying to achieve, how you measure that, and so on? Which should be key components of the strategy. So I've been lobbying with some members. So the decision of the strategy is with city council, as Brian mentioned. And I've been lobbying with some of the people to bring it up so we could at least have a discussion about creating a spreadsheet. I was hoping Nate would be here tonight. It's taking way longer than I thought, but I think now is the best time for several reasons. First of all, there's a misunderstanding that we can just sit back and wait for 4 years and then start evaluating something. And I think that's not a good idea at all. First of all, the list of things we put up there right now, combination of demand response, picking the best system and link to the so virtual. Those are things that we can be implemented in the next few years. In addition, there's a lot of other things to decide. If we leave by MEA, you have the question of, do we form a joint JAA, joint agency, or do it on our own? We need to become a load serving entity. There's all kinds of things that you would have to put in there. So this is not something you can wait 4 years and then start saying, okay, what are we going to do now? So that's my argument. And I could use your help with lobbying with your friends on the city council to say, at least let's discuss this and make a decision on this. So that's where I am on it.
Well, the city has a master plan. We even have a sustainability plan. Shouldn't we also have an energy plan?
You're asking me.
I mean, I guess maybe I'm just making a
The answer
statement.
is yes.
Statement received.
Yeah. So we could use your help, Phil.
Brian, if this isn't the right time, tell me when it would be, but if the board wanted to go, the Public Utility Board wanted to make some recommendation back to the council.
Yes.
When would be the appropriate time in this meeting to discuss what that could be?
I would say let's close out this so that they're not intertwined. And then if you wanted to bring up something in new business, which, we could do that now, or we could suspend new business, get through the reports, and then come back to new business. But I would say let's close this presentation out. The next presenter is not here. Then we can move into just broad new business.
The chair, you get to decide, right?
Today.
And I would hope that we go to this right away.
Yeah.
We'll take any
Of-
other
of
questions.
course. Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
so does anyone else have any questions for Richard, the modeling group?
Yeah, my final statement is, I know you probably wanted to know what the time was, and I told you how we built the watch. But the reason for that is that we've actually built something that's potentially very useful for them. Want to validate that, we have a process for doing that. And I'm really impressed with how much AI has improved just in the last year. We have some allies here that aren't so expensive. Use it in addition to the knowledge.
I have one more question. Did AI make that podcast?
Yeah, that was done through one of my AI assistants. That's Notebook LM. And you have a choice, a range of things. You could have it do PowerPoint slides. You can have it do an audio podcast or a video. And I did the audio because it was more thorough and accurate. And then I inserted the slides to make sense. But you can go directly to the video with Notebook LM, it's free.
So I have a question about, this whole thing is about MDR, right?
Right.
Where we could buy 10% of our peak load, which is like 25% of our total load.
Yeah.
I think everybody understands it would have to be nuclear for it to be sensible, right? Because of the capacity issues and all that. So I've never quite understood how that impacts the official greenhouse gas emissions, the market-based greenhouse gas emissions as reported by
Delta Institute?
Delta Institute. If we buy 25% of our load with the MDR, does that displace coal in the carbon accounting?
And I'll go beyond the Delta Institute and say, I had asked AI, and I recently asked AI to go back and reevaluate it. Given all the facts, so the prompt is really important. Member of IBA, we're required to do 100% of our whatever, and we're required to pay bonds for the next year, 10 years, and so on. What are the accounting systems we should use? And the overall answer is, well, that's up to the city to decide, but here's the four that you should consider. There's something called scope one equity based, which does not allow the MDR to subtract from it. There's scope two market based. I'll go to scope two location based first, which is that's the mix that we're getting from our node, which really is irrelevant to the decision. There's scope two market based, which allows you to subtract one for one as if you were replacing that amount of coal-fired energy. So that's scope two market-based. There's also scope three, chapter 15, where bonds are involved in payments, and that does not allow you to subtract. And then there's other members of the council and so on to say it's really simple. We just if we're still paying for it, we still have to count it. There's a range of things, and ultimately it's a city council to decide. If the city council chooses scope two market based, then you can subtract. If they choose any of the others as the main one, you can't. So if that's the case, there would be no value in the MDR, because we wouldn't be able to count the reduction.
Yeah, the only reason we spent $12 million a year would be to reduce our market-based carbon emissions, right?
In scope two market based, then there's a reduction.
Yeah, but like you said, there's location-based, which is a function of where the power that we actually get in our substations is generated from.
Correct.
Which in this area is probably 90% nuclear or 10% natural gas, something like that, or some
Yeah, it's over
variation of
50%
that.
nuclear, but anyway, really, it's 50-something% probably for nuclear. And natural gas.
I don't think so. Not if you look at a map of where nuclear power plants are in this region and natural gas plants, it's probably a very high percentage. But anyway, let me finish my statement. Let me finish. So there's a high preponderance of nuclear power plants surrounding us. There's natural gas plants surrounding us. I would posit that this city doesn't get one electron of coal delivered to it ever. So in that regard, any decision we make is not going to change our real world carbon emissions. Do you agree with that?
Oh,
okay. So this is really, I mean, we can do all the technical analysis we want, but it's really, I'm guessing whatever city council decides the rules are going to be is how this thing's going to turn out. If they say we will look at market-based means we buy it from a coal plant in Southern Illinois. Doesn't get delivered here, but we bought it there, that counts against us. Whereas physical real world we live in, we're not getting any carbon or coal-based power at all.
that's also
right.
Correct.
I mean, seems like it's going to be, the decision's hard, but it seems like that decision is going to determine everything we do.
But not every.
Just my opinion.
A lot.
Is that a question? That's my opinion.
Right. That goes back to my point about deciding what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to measure it.
Right.
We haven't yet done that. If we had known ahead of time which one they were going to pick, that would really simplify the process. If they picked anything other than scope two market base, there's no point in evaluating it.
Yes, I agree. So Delta Institute is kind of our rule maker. Brian, is that correct?
Correct. I mean, they did the last report for us, correct?
They were a consultant for a greenhouse gas inventory.
Oh, hey, Ben, I know you're back there.
Yeah.
So
You thought I was just talking to the
he was
wall?
hiding behind the post back there.
Yeah, you thought I was just talking to the wall.
I thought you like turned away from me because I asked you a question you didn't want to answer.
No, I would send it to mayor then.
So Delta Institute kind of establishes, they do the math, right? But they also establish kind of the rules. They go according to the greenhouse gas protocol, the international standard and all that, right?
Yeah, that's what we asked for in our request for quotes, was that they follow the total wording.
The market based.
Yeah, it's the traditional look at scope 1, 2, and 3, where our electricity that we purchase would be considered scope 2 market based.
Right. Why didn't we have them look at location based? Why didn't we have those numbers in our hands too?
That wasn't really a question when we engaged them.
I'm sorry.
There really wasn't a question on the table for us to consider when we engaged them in the process of starting the project. I actually hadn't heard about the scope one equity based thing until Richard brought it up to me 2 weeks ago.
Ben, it really depends on the prompt I give for AI. The first time I did it, I got exactly the same answer as you got. When I expanded the prompt to say, by the way, we're required to do our full requirements and we're paying bonds for 10 years. That's when I got the broader range of things to consider. So do you know if the outside company were aware of the other things about the bond payments and so on?
They didn't suggest anything they just ran the numbers based on our classic emissions generation pathways.
Okay.
I mean, if you're a market-based greenhouse gas emissions believer, nothing the city council does will change our market-based emissions, period, zero. Right? But if you're if you're low, I say market, if you're a
I think
location,
you had them flipped.
if you're a location-based greenhouse gas emissions believer, nothing the city council says, does, or chooses is going to change any of our calculated emissions. We use location-based.
Yeah, almost no decisions we make to change that.
Nobody. It's just whatever the power plants are around us. And by 2030, because many of the natural gas power plants around us are supposed to shut down under CEJA. Many of them up here are required to shut down because they're in environmental justice communities. We could just have a preponderance of only nuclear up here. It would be zero emissions. So we could be zero emissions by 2030, based on physics and reality.
Well, I agree with that, but that's not me to decide or you.
Yeah, I agree. Just trying to clarify it in my mind.
Right.
What the decision is. Right. And Ben, when is the next gas inventory going to be done?
I don't know. We haven't been given direction from city council to do so. We'd have to budget for it. One concept is that we can start maybe doing it internally. We are members of a nonprofit called ICLEI, which is Local Governments for Sustainability. And they have a tool called ClearPath that is used by a lot of our peers to conduct our own greenhouse gas analysis. We would need to ensure that we went back and ran the numbers through that tool for the years that we've done them in the past with different consultants, just to make sure it's apples to apples. Yeah, we don't have a time frame for that yet. I haven't decided, but I also haven't gotten any guidance from council or CMO.
Sheldon, do you have a question?
Ben, could you stand back up? Sorry. I think my question might be related back to you, but
It's
with the city of Naperville's arrangement with IMEA and the investment being into fossil-based power plants, how does that, if at all, trickle into the scope 1, 2, or 3 reporting for the city?
Well, basically, we addressed that through looking at 3 different emissions factors in our report or inventory. That's looking at what we've used in the past, which is called eGrid, which is an EPA region-based, like where are you? What's the general consensus of generation mixes? That we did that because that's what they've done in the past. And we wanted to see performance-based, how are we doing based on that? We also then had Delta develop an emissions factor for the IMEA's generation mix and run those numbers. And then we wanted to have a third option because we didn't just want to make it seem like we're pitting eGrid against IMEA for good or for worse. We wanted to see what about the market mix in that year for PJM. So we looked at those 3 different scenarios and they had different emissions factors. So but scopes 1, 2, and 3 were done in the classic way that we've seen most communities and organizations run inventories.
Okay, that's helpful. I think I'm asking a slightly different question. If I understand it correctly, does the city of through the city of Naperville's investment in fossil-based plants through an IMEA, require it to report a different type of emissions, different from how we consume electricity? Because we are an investor or owner, are you considered is that a scope 1 emission back to the city because you own effectively an investor's generation?
That's one way of looking at it. It depends on your opinion of the matter. But we don't, I mean, the city's decision to do greenhouse gas inventory was based on our original sustainability work plan, which was based on input from Nest and their report. And I'm trying to say, we don't have a requirement to do that reporting. Like, there's not an entity that requires the city of Naperville to report our emissions. That's a voluntary thing to see how we're doing. What's our baseline?
I guess I'm just asking because, again, depend on how the city of Naperville would report, kind of to your point, Jim. Whichever method you pick, doing an MDR may or may not benefit the city, because there's the consumption side of reporting your emissions, but there's also what do you own?
Yeah.
And so I think it just kind of gets back to this point of like, be helpful for the city to start to define some of those goals in order to figure out what you're actually solving.
I do need to kind of just pause there for one second, that the city does not own Prairie State or Trimble County. IMEA owns those assets, and that's key. There's been multiple legal opinions written on this, both by IMEA, signed off by the city's attorneys, that we are not owners of any of those assets directly, and therefore that has a lot to do with liability of those assets as well.
Yeah, I guess that's also a clarification I was looking for. So I've heard the city's considered an investor in them.
They are not.
They are not.
They are not. We are a
ownership.
member of IMEA. IMEA is a fractional owner of those assets.
But we pay, our bond payments go to IMEA for that.
The city does not have bond payments.
What payments do you call it?
We pay an energy rate, which includes bonds. Right, so everything that we do, we pay IMEA effectively a per megawatt hour cost. Right, and
Bonds are
then
included in that.
bonds are included in,
Right.
yes.
That's what I prompted, them like to go.
Mhm.
Okay. We're in line.
Question back there.
Wasn't it, the city that made it, conditional, it's joining the IMEA condition back in 2007. Was that conditional on IMEA going forward with the Prairie State Energy Campus?
Yes.
Good, yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Stark? Moving on, is there any other new business?
That was our opportunity to kind of, I mean, I guess kind of going back to what we were saying before, like, Brian, you're the director of the electric utility here. Do you feel like you can confidently answer, like, what is our long-term electricity strategy as a city?
No.
I feel like that is a critically important question for the city, and that has to be answered, and I think that is answered through an energy master plan. Seems like that's a huge gap and a huge risk for us not to have that as a city. I mean,
It certainly limits our ability to move forward on certain things that have longer horizons, right? Right, so if we go back to what the CES report was, they outlined a range of options that had very long timelines. And to be really clear and candid, a lot of those timelines are closing. Right, I mean, for example, and I'm not saying that we would do this, I'm not advocating for this at all, but natural gas turbines are 8 years. Some here may have different experiences, real world experiences, but I think that's kind of the consensus that I've heard. I've heard from member communities of IMEA that are putting in natural gas turbines for various reasons. 8 to 10 years, maybe, depending upon what's your environmental area and non-containment and things like that. So I would say at this point, we're starting, items or opportunities or options are starting to fall off the table.
To your point about turbines though, who would put a turbine in when they're gonna be outlawed in by 2035, 2045? All natural, according to CEJA, all natural gas turbines are gonna be outlawed
Mhm.
eventually by 2045. Many of them up here are starting in 2030.
So,
So it's not even an option I don't think anybody could explore.
Fair.
Generation option?
I'm sorry?
I mean, are there other, I mean, there's gotta be other generation options to at least consider or explore. I mean, even just for reliability, I mean, like looking at all these reports about what's gonna happen to the PJM and shortly thereafter MISO. I mean, if we're really concerned about brownouts, shouldn't we be looking at our own generation just for reliability concerns? Being a part of IMEA or any other, that's not gonna help us with brownouts. I mean, maybe partial generation, yeah, not for our full
I
load,
don't
but
disagree with you.
I mean,
Fine.
maybe then, yeah, or maybe it's a microgrid and that helps with reliability too. I mean,
we
there's,
certainly, so, Richard had in his presentation, right, and we have signed a contract with a company for our DERMS software, right? And the DERMS concept really aligns with a virtual power plant concept, right? We are talking to battery vendors now. One of the outcomes of the MDR RFP was we received some pricing from a battery vendor. We are engaging in batteries, right? Because, from a utility perspective, it goes SCADA upgrade, outage management system upgrade, and then distributed energy management system. And then once you get that system installed, you can start looking at a wide variety of different options, whether it be thermostats, whether it be Tesla power walls, home-owned batteries, large scale utility batteries. I think once you have that platform, it allows you a lot of flexibility. But I think to your question about next steps or how to move the conversation, I would say that staff would be looking for direction from council related to an energy strategy.
I guess, idea I'd like to surface to the board is how can we create an opportunity to go back to council with some recommendations? To start considering something different now. As somebody who was a dissenter against renewing with IMEA, if you go back and look at my presentation, I didn't say, don't renew with IMEA. I said, negotiate the contract and try to negotiate it around the terms and conditions that you want, which could mean a whole host of things. And given that the city of Naperville has invested everything that it has over however many years into IMEA, there are things about that relationship and the contract generation that we have that could be very advantageous to build on and a forward strategy, but we don't, to your point, Michelle, we don't have a strategy. People have talked about that for some time. So it's hard. I guess I was kind of shocked when the council voted against it, that there wasn't an and of something to do next. And I'm not sure if the board doesn't do something different, then it's just nothing happened. So, the idea I'd like to raise to the board is how could we come together and create some pathways, some set of events to develop something to take back to council and say, whoever said it best, like you can't sit back and wait a couple of years and just hope that things work out for the best, regardless of whether you're shooting for more sustainables or low cost or whatever it might be. Some combination of all that is going to be required, but it's going to take some comprehensive planning that needs to start immediately. And to the extent that it can or should include IMEA, like that needs to be understood as soon as possible to make sure we don't close the door on that.
And also, to support that, I had my AI assistant do this 5.5 minute video of why now relative to the strategy, and I've been getting a few city council members to pay attention, but not too many so far.
I think we're talking about two different things here. One is kind of the economics around our power supply. You're talking about, Michelle's addressing reliability, right? How is the city gonna?
But there could be a
power
lot.
when some of these forecasts come true and we're facing blackouts and brownouts, and it's almost like if natural gas power plants are gonna be outlawed. I don't know where the city, batteries, they discharge in 4 hours. That's no solution on a cold January night. Solar farms, windmills, that's kind of where the world's heading, I guess, in Illinois, except Pritzker said we should build 2 more nuclear power plants, which I was glad to hear him say. That'll protect our area, better, hopefully. if they're done in the same area that are existing nuclear power plants are.
How long it takes to build the nuclear plant?
Oh, yeah, it's a whole different, yeah,
No, I'm just,
Yeah.
how long it takes to build the nuclear plant? 10 years?
yeah, easily.
I wanted to respond both to Phil and to Jim. Phil, it was my impression in the city council comments that the decision that motivated the folks that voted yes to discontinue negotiation with IBA were looking to begin developing alternatives. They wanted to stop only negotiating with IBA. And Jim, to your point, you said reliability. I offer for your consideration the solution or the metric or the strategy that we use to avoid brownouts, blackouts, and improve stability is not traditional reliability term, but maybe we talked about grid resilience. I think that's something that you and I can probably agree on.
So I think in the interest of time and would, I guess, maybe a motion and a show of hands on support would help kind of guide where we would go next. Obviously, there's nothing on the agenda, so there's nothing that can be voted on here. There's not a letter or a motion to, to direct council or to do anything there, but perhaps a motion would be in order or a comment would be in order to have the board draft something to send to council would be one option. Another option would be for individual members to reach out to council members directly. Some options.
Or both.
I think it sounds, I would assume it would be valuable to do both. And if we can get kind of a memo or whatever from, the board as a whole, I think that would speak a lot of volumes that, especially since we didn't all necessarily agree on the recommendation about the IMEA contract, but if we can all agree that we need as a city a long-term energy strategy and plan, I would hope that would resonate.
Is there consensus of the members here for that?
I'll just say that in order to develop a plan, somebody has to give you guideposts,
Mhm.
And I don't think the city council is willing to provide guideposts. If they say carbon free, that's it. That's one plan. If they say lowest cost, well, that's another plan. I don't know if we have guidance from them.
Well, I don't think that, and maybe what I'm hearing, I'm sorry.
We should include that in the memo. I totally agree. Like I mentioned the reliability, but I feel like we keep going back to the three things. It's cost, sustainability, and reliability. Like we've always said that those are the three, like that's the purpose of, the PUAB is to kind of consider all those things. And we need guidance, or the utility needs guidance on, okay, how are each of those weighed? And are there options where they're weighed differently? Like maybe it's a few different.
I'd like the motion that the board develop a letter that would go to the council recommending that the council provide some directive to you, Brian, I guess, as the utility director, to determine how there can be a strategy, that the steps could be taken to start developing a energy strategy.
Is there
I second that motion. Is it?
yeah, I would just look for a show of hands. I don't want to get into a formal motion because
Okay.
we don't have anything on the agenda and that would just get, but if there's a majority here, I can have mayor start working on that tomorrow.
Comment. I agree with Phil. That's needed. Should it be in the context that don't really have a plan and it's inappropriate not to have a plan? I mean, we could say that we want to do this, this and that, but I think it's not a show, but it's almost unbelievable that we're just not doing anything. So should any sort of document or whatever comes out of this group strongly say, you just can't not do anything. You can't not keep talking with IMEA. We can't not look at clean energy options, some solar farm out, Rockford or something. I just not doing anything just doesn't seem appropriate to me. I'm sure they aren't happy with them, you know, with that fact at the city council level either, but maybe it just needs to be a little bit more strongly worded from this board that we just kind of disagree, that we're just dropping everything. Just throwing it out there for discussion.
Thing I would have had, in addition to what Jim was saying. My assumption is some of the people I've talked to from city council is that they think that there's not a lot to do for 4 years from now. So 4 years from now, but it's not the case. So I need to think we can help overcome that misconception about.
Got a question?
Richard, I just disagree. I don't, it's, I get it.
Boy, I tried really hard to get somebody to stand up and say, let's at least discuss it. They agree with me completely and they don't do that. Tell me why.
Okay, all right,
The letter that mayor drafts, would we have the chance to review that and provide comments before it goes?
Mayor will simply be here to type a form letter for you to work off of. We will not be, staff will not be drafting the letter.
Oh, got it, okay.
Give you the format.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does that address any other new business? We good? Good?
Thank you.
Okay. So we will help facilitate whatever the board would like. Actually, mayor will. dfm@naperville.il.us for all of the thanks. Okay, we'll move on into reports if there's no new business.
Thank you.
Is it okay to release Richard?
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, Richard.
okay. Where are you going?
I gotta get out of the bus. Hold on,
Uh-oh.
I'm reading my notes.
It's not good. Okay, electric utility fund overview. In response to the request that we received, actually mayor received from a PUAB to reduce the number of charts, graphs and other things and also put a summary. I don't want to walk through the whole report. I think we all kind of get a little dizzy looking at spreadsheets. Revenue was higher than expected and so were costs. Generally, finance believes it's okay. It's in line with the rate study. Large bill came in at the end of 2025 for about $2.5 million. This was related to some improvements at our tollway substation, kind of skewed our cash position. And then we also have warehouse. We've been pretty clear that we're trying to grow the warehouse, the amount of material in our warehouse due to supply chain issues, as well as our system condition report that we completed with asset management. And so our warehouse spend was higher than expected. And generally, when I say warehouse spend, that's not something that we put in the field. That's something that we have in our warehouse. So are there any specific questions that I can answer on the financials?
One quick question. On
Yes.
the purchase electricity overage, is that because of a cost increase, or like a rate increase, cost of electricity, or just volume metric?
Volume was up by 1%.
Correct.
I believe costs were slightly higher than projected as well, but that also yields a change in the PPA on the bill, right? So in theory, and when I say in theory, it's because there is a 6-month lag in the PPA cost recoup, right? So if IMEA costs come in higher than what we projected in the rate study, it is captured in the PPA, but there's a 6-month lag in the utility recouping the cash. So we're recouping the cash from the higher costs. Any other questions on financials? I really just want to get to water report. I find them so pissed. Utility dashboards and cost comparisons. Again, reformatted here. We'll talk a little bit about SAIDI, reduced SAIDI numbers. So SAIDI went down. I would say we're doing well through the beginning of this year. We've just had a couple of vehicle versus equipment incidents, I would say. Also, when the snow melted, we found a couple of transformers that were in less than ideal situations. Vaults had collapsed while the snow was around them. So You know, I think when we look at our city versus last year, we're down significantly. I will say, you know, this is a great time of year. We don't typically have outages this time of year, so I'll savor this moment. Renewable Energy Program, Renewable Energy Fund, IMEA funds.
On the renewable energy program, we know the funds have ran out the first week of November of last year. It started back in January, and we are up to a good start. We are so far 28% spent out of the budget, the $280,000. And we have not seen any decrease. You know, it's been steady with solar adding installation and neighborhood. So I think if we continue on this path, I think we're gonna run out of that money, you know, probably around the summertime.
And our sustainability folks have taken over the Renewable Energy Fund program. They have also taken over the IMEA grant programs for residential and commercial as well.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense from a, you know, it was always past the changes through the electric utility perspective. This way they can just work with stakeholders and propose those changes directly to council.
Also, CVR savings were added to this graph, included 2025 in there. And as you can see, our solar installation count has been, increasing steadily.
You think that'll flatten out now that net credits have been removed, federal tax credits have been removed?
We believe so, but right now, what we see coming through the permitting process, it's still.
It's what?
What we see coming through the permitting process, we have not seen a decline yet.
Oh. I guess that's a good predictor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the next item are new items. So these have been generally requested in various forms and fashions. So now what we have, and we'll be reporting these, this is kind of what I would call the true up. This kind of gets the baseline out there, and then going forward, we'll just report the delta between this meeting and the next meeting. But what you're looking at there on the top is the average residential customer bill for ComEd with all of the line items on it. Then that's a total amount that includes distribution and energy charges. When you look at the IPA energy charge, that is all of the line items except for the monthly customer charge, the distribution facility charge, and the metering charge. I also think that does not include the Illinois electricity distribution tax charge. So the top 4 line items are not included in that. The rest are related to energy. Then we compare the Naperville bill to the ComEd bill as a whole for 844 residential kilowatt hours. And then we also compare the IMEA bill amount per megawatt hour to the IPA energy charge. And that's where those numbers come from. Are there any questions on this before we move on to the next one?
I'm assuming these are based on ComEd default energy supply rates, not using third-party suppliers.
That is correct. That is correct.
You used the term IPA, that's what you mean, right? Illinois Power Agency.
That's correct.
That's who buys the power for ComEd. So
That is the default customer. Yes, these are for the default. Yes. Next, this is where I will have to preface with energy markets are complex. So this is something that we've been working on for the past month or so. At the top, you'll see the IPA price to compare, which is not the IPA energy cost, right? So on the IPA's website, they have a cost to compare. It generally includes the items with an X below it. So energy hedging, capacity. It is load following and it includes transmission charges. The next column is market energy capacity and transmission. I simply take the PJM day ahead charges for the previous month and the fixed PJM capacity cost. We know that that's load following because that's just direct market. And then we also have the transmission charge in there. That's what, effectively, if the city was 100% exposed to the market with no hedging, that's what the energy cost would be. You see the dollars per megawatt hour average, and then you have a weighted average. The IPA, the ComEd bill line items, and the IMEA don't have weighted averages for a month, right? It's just a straight all-in fee. But this one is a weighted, so what this does is it takes a look at when the city uses energy the most. ComEd bill line items, that's a straight number from the last slide, and it includes those items, and then IMEA is, all in. Yes,
This isn't gonna change anything, but I just feel compelled to make the comment to
Yes.
get it off my chest. I appreciate that this is being shown. I think what's missing is showing, it's basically, if people are looking at this and they're comparing city of Naperville residential costs to ComEd, I think it's misleading because city residents in Naperville don't buy their own energy. The municipality buys it for them. In ComEd, you're basically choosing to the default rate, or you can go through a third supplier. An alternate comparison could be as if the city of Naperville was buying wholesale power for its residents. So that price could actually be lower than defaulting to ComEd.
but would that not be the market energy capacity?
I don't know, tell me.
I can't because I can't release the comment, the MDR.
Maybe.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think the only thing that can be is if someone went out and bid for it. Right? I mean, that's the only way.
There's risk margin
Yes.
built into retail power versus buying wholesale power, which can throw the price comparisons off.
I think what you're saying is that there's a lot of risk in the market energy capacity transmission. I mean, because if you take a look, this is June, Mayor, if you could pull up January, I think you could see the risk in there.
Looks like the $900 hours that we saw in January.
That one.
Hmm.
That one.
And to be fair, this is day ahead. I don't think anyone would ever use real time. So I just want to be clear that my market comparisons are based on day ahead.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, this is a start. I would say this is a start. If someone has any, one of the concepts that I may have heard was to try, and this was a staff discussion of to try and make them all equal. I think there's an immense amount of assumptions that would have to be made to make this equal that I'm not comfortable with making. I think that you could skew the numbers so large. These are the facts. These are all traceable back to numbers. That's where I will leave this. But if there's something else that someone thinks has a question about, what is included, what's not included, what could be clearer. As you can tell, there's a large amount of engineers that work in the utility, and that's why this is a very simple chart. There's no colors, there's nothing. It's just that.
I just want to be clear, that far left-hand column, that's the Illinois Power Agency. The starting price, right, at the top.
The IPA price to compare, that is on the IPA's website. It's on the, what's that? What's the price to, Plug in Illinois? Yes, correct.
But essentially, that's what they've gone out, bought power for ComEd to resell, or Ameren to resell, right? We only care
Right.
about the ComEd. So they've gone out to market, they've bid out to market and bought power so that ComEd can take that and resell it to its customers. And I don't know if I understand exactly how they do it, but I understand that they'll do, like a 3-year fixed price bid and then another layered one on top of that, et cetera, et cetera. So they're not like all buying it all at once and getting.
It's my understanding that they try to take the load shape and build and layer in different contracts such that you're not 100% exposed to a single year.
Yeah, and you have load following on there because if they're gonna buy power for ComEd to resell, it has to be power that follows load.
Yes,
Into Chicago and all that.
correct.
So that's kind of like, I mean, it seems to me that if Naperville went out and bid its power out, it might simulate what IPA does, but at a much lower scale. It would do a layer.
Naperville would be at a lower scale than the IP.
Yes, yeah, volume wise. So I think there's an argument at least that that's somehow, you know, close to if you had your own procurement staff and you did everything that IPA did, to secure power for Naperville, those numbers could be, and, you know, I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but could be, you know, roughly similar in how they're determined. And then the second to the left column, as you said, that reflects the hourly pricing. Right? And we saw that
Day
fluctuate
ahead.
like crazy in
Day ahead,
January.
yes, that's correct.
I don't think, like you said, I don't think any municipality would buy hourly pricing for its customer base. That'd be wild.
Okay. Regulatory update, brief summary of the resource adequacy study findings, Surge passage, and then the PJM delivery year 27-28 capacity auction results. Happy to answer any questions on that. Thank you, Chairman.
Ryan, did I hear somewhere that the, you know, right now there's a cap on capacity?
That's correct.
Governor Shapiro, Pennsylvania worked out some deal with PJM where there's a cap.
Yes.
I thought I heard that that's gonna be extended for like 2 more years now. Is that? you heard that?
23rd, I think,
Huh?
correct?
It's not final, but that's what I've heard as well. That's what IMEA staff reported to us today as well. That there are discussions to continue the cap.
At the $350 level or whatever it is now.
I think around there. Yeah. I would say I didn't hear anything substantially different. Okay. IMEA update, and transmission bills. This is something that's been requested. I will say IMEA had several meetings over the past couple of days. I would say the major points, their transmission costs are going up, their power costs necessarily will then go up as well. You know, I'll have a full summary out in the manager's memorandum next Thursday. It's complex, there's a lot, you'll see that. IMEA is going to start working on a demand response program for thermostats. Expect to see about 750 slots open for this across all the member communities, probably over the next year or so. And basically, they're going to work on something related to gift cards, an enrollment gift card, and then a stay-in gift card. From an agency perspective, they thought perhaps providing exact kilowatt hour, cost savings would be very difficult to pass those from IMEA back to a member community, and then I would have to put those on the bill. So they're looking at that. They're also looking at.
You say looking at that, when you say thermostats, it means they would control your thermostat.
That's
Is that what you're
correct.
saying?
That's correct. As an opt-in, right? You would have the option to opt in for them to use thermostats, primarily the Nest, and I think they have a new name now, and Residio thermostats to start with. But their platform, much like our platform, can be expanded in the future. From a demand response perspective, they're also asking member communities if they're interested in doing conservation voltage reduction. We already have a system that's out there, right? But they're going to release an RFP to their members to say, what's your level of readiness? What's your level of willingness to do this? And then if there is interest, they will commission a study to see if it's cost, benefit analysis. They also are going to release their battery storage study over the next week or two, but they provided a general summary of it, and they will be moving forward with asking member communities who's interested in hosting a battery storage system. Somewhere probably around a 5 megawatt proof of concept system. Could be a little bit larger depending on, where there's an economy of scale. I've already had some conversations with our fire department about, whether we would be able to host that and whatnot. They were in alignment. So depending on what comes out, we'll likely be responding to that to host to be put into the hat to host an IMEA battery storage system. We are also locally, we are looking at battery energy storage systems. Their economics, it seems like a significant price drop was realized over the past several months. So we're working on that.
Question.
Yes.
What would be the likelihood of IMEA doing a battery project in Naperville under the current conditions where we're not possibly going to renew our contract with them?
That would be a board decision, and I can't speak for the board, but I certainly would try.
And comment or not comment, the IPA has been charged with a battery build out in Illinois, 3 gigawatts, I think,
Yes,
$8
$3,000.
billion.
Yep.
Would we be excluded from participating in that simply because we're part of IMEA or our load is in ComEd? So, it would be something that would be doable in April. Do you know if there's any restrictions on that battery program that
I
could
believe
be in
that,
Naperville?
I believe the battery program was related to investor-owned utilities in the state, but I believe that battery program is for investor-owned utilities in the state, but I can certainly take a look.
With regards to IMEA, what is the status of the renewal proposal that they provided to the city of Naperville?
Been rescinded.
It's been rescinded.
There is no proposal on the table. Any proposal would have to be brought through the IMEA board. So there is currently nothing on the table.
In other words, if the city of Naperville wanted to continue something, they would have to take the proposal back to IMEA. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that there is no proposal on the table for a renewal or an extension, however you want to look at it. Staff is not authorized to discuss it with IMEA, after that. And the IMEA board, if we were, I would say hypothetically, if we were authorized to go back and talk to IMEA, we would have to start negotiations, and then anything that IMEA staff kind of came up with, Naperville staff would have to go through the IMEA board of directors. The IMEA board approved the draft form of the template as it was, offered it to 32 members. That timeline has passed. That was rescinded, closed out. So anything new would have to come from staff through the IMEA board before Naperville looked at it.
You made a comment about transmission costs going higher.
Yes.
There's a note from Plug in Illinois that the ComEd transmission cost is going up too. They have it as $18.2 per megawatt hour.
Okay. Today IMEA reported that they were expecting, or they had seen the cost going up about 6.5% in PJM. So
Okay.
I don't know how what I'm saying translates to what you have, but
Do those costs trickle down to the bill citizens?
absolutely. That's in the IMEA, that's in the total IMEA cost, right? Now, I will be very clear that IMEA socializes transmission costs. So MISO might have a higher, increase. I think MISO was looking at like a 10% increase. PJM was like 6.5. Those, yeah.
So I saw some, I don't know if it was on social media, YouTube videos or something like that, where the IMEA transmission costs were highlighted, going up quite rapidly. And I recall that being a discussion amongst the PUAB last year about transmission rates. And as an outcome of that, IMEA put together a very detailed 5-page technical analysis showing that, if we had gotten our generation from PJM, that the transmission costs would have been about exactly the same that we were charged by IMEA that year, whatever the time frame is. It's like $16 million or whatever. That's what IMEA charges. IMEA's report indicated that if you did a transmission analysis, PJM would have been about the same dollar amount. So, but that's been highlighted recently by certain folks in Naperville as being a big negative, meaning with IMEA, are these high transmission costs. Is there a way to do a continuous analysis of transmission costs, IMEA transmission costs, and if we got all our supply in PJM from some unknown supplier, to make that comparison to validate whether these statements made by folks is true or not? Because a year ago, it wasn't true. It was exactly the same dollar amount. But now it seems to be brought up as being a big negative for renewing with IMEA.
So transmission costs are based on your NSPL, which is a number that's calculated, multiplied by the cost of transmission.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that there's been public statements have been made that we're paying a lot more for transmission than we should be paying if we had gotten our supply from PJM. And then I'm saying that's a year ago in May, that wasn't true when IMEA put their report together, but it's being put out there like right now to the public. You know, I don't know who could do that. IMEA could do that report again, maybe just update it from a year ago. Or you guys can do it. It was more than just multiplying your PLC times your capacity charge. There were a bunch of other costs in there that, you know, added up to the PJM charge.
Yeah, because Naperville is actually a distribution customer on the south side of town, so there's some distribution costs as well from ComEd. Right, so we have the transmission connection fee and then we have a distribution charge as well that gets passed back so. Okay, I have a note too.
I'm just saying, there's a group out there saying this. And I think it should be either supported, yes, that's true, or no, it's not true.
So IMEA transmission costs versus market costs.
I guess, yeah. And then this group is correct that transmission rates are increasing quite rapidly in MISO, but as Tim said back there, ComEd just raised their rates like 20%. I just saw a news article. They're gonna spend like almost $12 billion on transmission costs in the next couple of years. That's gonna only grow as well. I don't think you get away from transmission costs no matter where you get your power from. Personally, that's my opinion.
Okay. Any other questions? Going once, going twice, going three times. It is now water's turn and there will be no further questions for electric. Thank you.
We need to take a motion forward.
Oh, yes. I will entertain a motion to accept all of the reports outlined in 1, 2, 3, 4 on the agenda.
I motion to accept the.
A second.
Mayor, roll call before you get
All
into
in
transmission
favor?
cost analysis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We left Phil's motion hanging here, though. I kind of interrupted it. He had this motion about what we should do about city council.
I saw hands in the air.
He made a motion, she seconded it, then I kind of,
It wasn't an official motion.
Yeah, I can't have a motion because there was nothing on the agenda. I was looking for a show of hands and am I correct that there was a consensus to do that?
Gotta get a template.
It'll be an office forms template. You'll have it in your email tomorrow.
I know how to fill those out with AI, so we're good.
that's good to put one together.
All right. I shall be quiet now.
I'm gonna combine the next two items here, the 2025 year-end budget report and the period 1 January of this year financial summary. Just to be brief, 25. saw the retirement of the Water Capital Fund. It's sort of outlived its usefulness. We are sort of rolling all of the capital expenditures into the Water Utility Fund for 26 moving forward. Reduces the need for interfund transfers, just sort of simplifies things a little bit. Can't really speak to why that capital fund was initially created, but I think it had to do with the increase in capital spending that the water utility saw. Starting probably around 5 years ago, we wanted to have a dedicated fund for that, but that time has come and gone. On the revenue side, things were pretty spot on with the exception of bond sale proceeds. We had budgeted 31 million for that and wound up only taking about 20 million. Main reason for that, again, was to sort of align capital expenditures with borrowing. On the expense side of things, sort of the same thing here. One thing I'd really like to point out was that our capital expenditures were up to 50% of budget. I think it was close as 3 years ago, that number was down to around 20%. So just speaks to the work that the water utility is doing and getting the job, the work done that we have budgeted for a year. Especially given the sort of the complexity of the projects, especially some of the stuff down at Springbrook. That we're sort of able to get to at least 50% of the capital outlay is pretty darn good. In terms of variances, there weren't too many, both on the revenue side and the purchased water side. Things were really pretty much on target. Again, I spoke to the bond proceeds and the capital outlay. One issue that we did find was on some interfund transfers. That was 231% of budget, but we actually did a little bit of diving into that, and I think that's a little bit of an accounting trick because Brian's group did some work for us on the second feed to Springbrook that was not budgeted for. So that accounts for, I think I did the numbers all but $3 worth of the overage. As far as the January performance so far, pretty much on target with everything. The things that we are not on target for, the easy answer for that is we typically see year-long encumbrances. Things like purchased water are all encumbered in the first period of the month. So all of our purchased water is encumbered. Therefore, that account is going to be showing 100% accounted for, even though we obviously have not exhausted all of our purchased water for the year in a single month. Are there any questions on any of the financials? If not, from an operational standpoint, I'm not really too sure that we have anything to report on that, but we are willing to sort of entertain any questions that you might have had from an operational perspective.
I have one on financials.
Sure.
And it's really just a clarification, and it's not to make any point. I'm just trying to kind of like step back from the past year of conversations about all of our IUP negotiations. And no, Brian, I'm not bringing you back into this, but on page 3 of, I think it's this document. I can't remember if this happened when I was on the board or not, but at the very bottom in the section 2026 fiscal outlook, it references that to support planned capital investments, the 2026 budget included rate adjustments of 12% for water and 10% for wastewater. Can you remind me, does that mean that as part of the past water rate study, that the cost of water and wastewater for the residents in Naperville were increased by 12%, 10%?
Correct.
Those Bardo rates too.
The only reason I asked, I'm just trying to understand, like, if it seems like if that would have happened with electricity, like the lid would have blown off, but somehow it happened with water and it was like almost never really debated.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if that was, it was actually, I think the true number was actually much higher, and the fact that these 12 and 10 were included is really based more on, that's the retail rate. Keep in mind, we're also paying the wholesale rate to DuPage Water as well. So,
DuPage Water Commission, and correct me if I'm wrong, I may be outside of my lane here, but DuPage Water Commission is cost of service as well, correct?
Hmm.
Right, so it's a variable cost that necessarily fluctuates depending upon their revenue requirement for that month.
yeah, I mean, and obviously DWC is just a pass through on the bill, so, yeah, but that's 12 and 10 for water. That's the Naperville retail
Or the-
rate.
And I believe that that was to be kept local and as part of the rate study.
Correct.
And
And recall too, I believe that the rate study had identified the possibility for higher rate increases. And in an effort to keep those rates somewhat manageable, the amount of debt was to be increased to keep the rate increases.
I think I just shared for board perspective, and I'm certainly not one that wants my energy costs to go higher, and that's not what I'm advocating for. But, you know, I work across markets across the United States, and, you know, we kind of have luxury here in Chicago, Boston, DC, New York. They pay 3 times our energy costs, and, you know, it's a reflection of a whole lot of things. But it's if we can move into a pathway of designing an energy strategy, there may be kind of a precedent set here that if you're going to invest in capital to provide reliability and things like that, there may need to be rate increases in order to subsidize that, but it all needs to be anchored back to a strategy. So not to take this back to electricity, but it's almost like kind of like we operate in silos when we talk about costs, when you're able to justify cost or rate increases on one side, but on the other side, it's kind of like unspoken to consider that.
I think part of it also was to address policy change. In the past, we were trying to be the lowest cost provider of water, wastewater services around. Unfortunately, that strategy was helping us fall farther and farther behind. We weren't doing the things we needed to keep up with what we needed to do. So when Daryl started, he actually convinced everybody that we'd actually need to be in the middle of the pack. If we're at the bottom and we're not getting things done, if we're at the top, we're probably wasting money. So we want to target the middle of the pack. So we started doing these rate studies. We tried to make sure we got these things done. We started doing asset evaluations, facility plans, so that we identified everything that needs to be done. And we budgeted out for 5, 10, 20 years. So I think part of that is just to get us to where we need to be.
as an outsider, I remember the conversation around getting your water main replacement to where it should be.
Right. I mean,
Right, that was the primary driver of rate increases, was to move from 1 mile a year to.
Yeah, I mean, in prior years, we were doing a couple of thousand feet, and the guidance is you should be doing 1% of your water main a year. We have 750 miles of water main a year, so we need to do 7.5 miles of water main replacement a year. Like I said, we were only doing a couple of thousand feet. Well, now we're behind. So our program is over the next several years to go from 5 miles to 7.5 miles to 10 miles to catch up to where we need to be, and then start heading back down to target that 7.5 miles.
But there was concern from especially finance, if I remember correctly, that, you know, to go to 13 miles, 0 to 13 miles was not sustainable,
Right.
was not, you can't just scale that, so.
Stair-step approach.
There's an element of deference that eventually catches up with you, and you can model the cash flow however you want, but you know, pay me now, pay me later. It might cost you more to do it later, even though you're saving now.
Yeah, it'll never be cheaper than to do it today.
If we had estimated when we started doing sort of a deeper dive into what the capital should look like and how do we get to that 1%, we estimated that we're about 50 miles of water main behind. And that's if we went to 7 miles, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. We're still not there yet because of that stair-step approach and sort of the sticker shock that it would take to get up there. One of the things too, I think that we're seeing that is in our favor is from a pricing perspective, we're getting out to bid on a lot of these water main projects a lot earlier than we had been. And so we're seeing a lot better pricing than we had in the past. We had been trying to cram design and bidding and construction all into a single calendar year. And so when you're bidding projects out in March and April, a lot of these contractors, their work is spoken for the year. And, so they'll come back to us and say, hey, yeah, I mean, we can squeeze you in, but I'm gonna have to hire a second crew to come out and it's gonna cost you a little bit.
Overtime costs.
Exactly. So that was another thing that Daryl had sort of mentioned to the department as a whole.
Yeah, so now we're actually designing one year,
building
then we're
that.
going out to bid like December. So we get the winter pricing for all these other, the contractors are lighting up the projects. So we're actually seeing projects coming in 50% of what the estimate was from the engineer.
When we were doing about 1,000 feet a year, we had pricing around 400 feet, all in traffic control, all that material labor for water main. That jumped up to about 800 when we were bidding out projects late. Now we're seeing back down to $400 or $500 a linear foot all in, which is great. I mean, it means better budgeting for us and better costs to do.
When you bid out like, a couple miles of water pipe, how many bidders normally respond to that?
We've been really pleased, actually. I think, so we were doing, 4 to 5 projects this year, and I think all but one is out. And I've seen on one where we had easily 7 to 10 bidders. What's even better about that is the grouping on price. Top to bottom, it's pretty tight.
Good terms.
Yeah. So, pretty pleased that we're getting good pricing. And look, the contractor community talks, they know what it's like to do business here and what to expect and everything. So I think that should factor into it a little bit as well. But,
Another question, you mentioned being behind on the replacements. So the catch up that needs to be done, is that accounted for in the current rate study?
No.
Time? So it's kind of foreshadowing that rates are gonna keep climbing up to account for the capital planning that needs to be.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I think that's gonna play into that as well, right? So I mean, if we're getting up to 10 miles a year to play catch up, can TED, Transportation Engineering and Development, keep up with patching and the condition that we're potentially gonna be leaving some of these roads in? I don't know that they have the money to do that. We've been told that they don't. So whether or not we get to that 10 miles, I think, we would obviously love to do it, but I think that is certainly not a certainty that we ever do get there.
We talk about freshwater or wastewater mostly.
Fresh. Although I will say that I believe this year we are starting our first complete open cut full-on replacement of sanitary sewer in East Highlands. So this is an area of town that was one of the first areas to receive cured in place pipe. So where that sanitary sewer was actually lined. Because we were one of the early adopters of that, the technology for that was still in its infancy. And we're seeing a lot of premature failure with that, where the pipe within the pipe is starting to fold down and constrict. And so we're really seeing some capacity constraints in those pipes. And unfortunately, you can't reline a previously lined pipe. The only option there is to dig a hole and take that old pipe out, put the pipe in. So,
Yeah, that was sold in 1959. It was lined in 2005, so the lining has lasted 20 years, which is what's expected.
there are no other questions. What is the next one here? Operations. There's any questions on operations summary?
Daryl did a good job of identifying some of the completed active construction projects, along with operations statistics, and then some of the regulatory compliance issues. We did receive our draft on PDAS permit, the pre-public notice version of it. So we've been in negotiations with Illinois EPA. They've asked for several different modifications, which they've been open to and agreed to, such as the industrial user inventory, And then also, the bird reduction. So since we've been almost 4.5 years without an excursion, they're allowing us to reduce our regulatory monitoring from 3 days a week down to 2 days a week. And the other one is PFAS, which they're working on a draft response, should come out sometime mid-March.
You said that first one was ammonia?
Pardon?
What was the first? You said there hasn't been an excursion in 4 years. Of
4.5 years.
Of what?
For anything for the plant. The last one was, I think, was for fecal coliform. That's because the plant's over capacity, so we have a high flow event. We'll get solid to wash out from our clarifiers. Then they ends up blinding the filter, so we send those solids back out into the river, and it has fecal coliform.
Do you have an-
You said NPDES permit is now available. Is it draft?
No, we have the pre-public notice draft for it.
It's a draft permit.
Right. And once we,
Will you make that available on our website?
well, we prefer not to because it's,
Well, most of the sanitary districts do publish.
well, it's going to be going out for public notice.
But at
probably.
least if you don't put it on the website, will you make it available to PUAB members?
Yes, just so you're aware, though, a lot of it's going to change.
Yeah, please let us know.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
Because we're still working on the draft right now. We're going to probably wrapping it up with the next couple of weeks. At that point, they will go out to public notice, which is a 30-day comment period, which means that all the public can comment on it. And we know from the Elmhurst permit that went out for public notice that the environmental groups submitted like 18 pages worth of changes they want to make for that. And after that, then there's a possibility of a public hearing followed by the final draft permit.
So it will take its own time.
Yeah.
I understand that. That's very normal.
Yeah. So, the other one was we had to do some increased monitoring for a high lead level from one of our monitoring sites. We did additional sampling, confirmed that it was probably just an outlier because it came back as 0, less than detection limit for that. But we did do that.
Do you have any industries discharging that? Okay, I mean, potentially discharging that?
No, this is from the drinking water side for we do annual monitoring for lead and copper in the distribution system. We do 100 samples every 6 months. And one of those that the residents collect the samples and they give it back to us because it has to be first draw within with the water sitting in the pipes at least 6 hours. So a resident collected the sample, we sent it to the lab for testing, they had a high result. Subsequent sampling came back and it was all below detection limit. So we just did additional sampling for that, make sure that it was all okay.
Sorry if this has been discussed already, but does Naperville have lead pipes anymore?
203, I think, of the last inventory.
203 homes?
Service lines.
And Naperville has a program to replace those or not?
Yes. We actually had a loan from the Illinois EPA.
Yeah, so we applied for and were granted a $3.5 million state revolving fund loan. With that amount of money available to us, interest-free, which is great. I think with all of the attention that's been paid to lead lately, the EPA has basically said, hey, if we're going to require you guys to remove these lead service lines from your system, we need to help you guys fund that a little bit. And so any lead work is going to be interest-free from the loan for state revolving funds. So we got about $3.5 million. With that amount, we anticipate being able to complete and remove all of the known lead service lines from the distribution system. That project is actually out to bid as we speak. I think bids would be opened on that March 3rd, with construction hopefully starting in April or May. But yeah, we're hopeful that come this time next year, will be sort of a lead-free community here in the city, which is great. A lot of the other municipalities in suburban Chicago haven't been as lucky. And I say luck just because of how Naperville was developed, right? We stopped using lead in our water service lines around 1960, way before Naperville experienced its big construction boom. You see communities like Elgin, which maybe are a little bit older and they're dealing with tens of thousands of lead service lines, not to mention
Those lead lines extend into the residences' homes,
oftentimes, yeah,
basements
yeah.
and all that, so
Yeah.
you take it all the way in.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
required to take
We're-
the full replacement. Because
So,
if they found out that lead levels actually increase if you only do a partial replacement, because you disturb the, because it's left of the lead line.
All the way up to the meter, right? All the way
Yeah,
up
all
to
the
the
way,
meter,
yeah.
all the way up to the meter.
which is interesting because, so what does that mean? I mean, that means we're having residents sign agreements allowing us access into their private residences in order to get this work done. When we started this project, I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we had no problems with people wanting to get this work done. We had more agreements signed than we had capacity to get the work done. I would anticipate that, whereas we still have, I think we've got almost all of the agreements signed, but there's gonna be some holdouts, some people that just really don't see the need to have this work done and don't want people in their basements and everything, and that is certainly their right, but I believe that the law requiring lead service line replacements does dictate that we sort of would need to refer them to Illinois Department of Public Health, saying we've done our due diligence. It's just not gonna happen at this address.
Probably you can take them to the court of law,
Yeah.
saying that we are enforcing.
Well, and there's been talk too, I don't know that there's anything official or certainly coming down the line, but certain things for disclosure when you go to sell a property.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
That,
that's
hey,
right.
this has a lead service line, and leaving that between two parties saying, hey, I'm interested in buying the home, but you gotta get the lead service line out first.
Yeah, are the lead pipes, are they concentrated somewhere? Or are they pretty dispersed around the city?
Mostly in the old downtown area.
Okay.
So this, one of the, missions of this board was to receive complaints about smart meters. It's actually in our charter. Are we gonna start getting complaints from people that city of Naperville wants to come into my house and take my lead line out and I don't want them to?
I'd like to think no, I mean, after Flint, Michigan, I feel like there's been enough attention to pay to this sort of nationally, and I don't wanna say that. I don't know that anyone is disputing the negative effects of lead in drinking water. So the fact that we did 62 lead service line replacements last year, I think we did close to 80 the year before. I think if you were gonna hear it, you would have heard it already.
I like to motion that any public complaints that come in are directed to Jim.
Why not mayor?
Giving him a break.
Oh,
He's got a lot of work.
Got that memo.
Any questions on the operation summary, officials? Then on to the staff report. One of the big items there is on the regulatory compliance. We did get a public notice requiring, due to a monitoring violation. This was due to the Illinois EPA laboratory. We did the sampling for SOCs in 2003 as we're required to do. Illinois EPA lab failed to upload the data into their database. Called them and argued with them about was it really our fault, but due to the US EPA regulations, they're not allowed to dismiss the monitoring violation. So we will be issuing a notice in this consumer confidence report this year. About that. The other one is in the, we were planning March cybersecurity tabletop exercise with CISA. Unfortunately, they're part of the Department of Homeland Security due to the partial government shutdown that has been on a pause right now.
I think it was supposed to happen today, right?
No, we had a meeting on it today. It was supposed to happen in March. And then the other item was as far as capital improvements, Central Elevated Project is resuming. They were delivering supplies this week and they'll start erection of the central elevated tank over near Fifth Avenue Station starting next. Any questions on staff report? Okay, quarterly regulatory report. As I mentioned, we did receive our pre-public notice NPDS permit. It did include a 0.5 milligram per liter total phosphorus limit. And then our other big item is our concern with emerging contaminants, namely PFAS or forever chemicals. We're going to be required to monitor our influent and effluent quarterly for that, for 40 PFAS chemicals, along with our biosolids semi-annually, and then report those out to the Illinois EPA. One of the things we're arguing against right now is we do have a requirement now to put out a PFAS sum. And this is mainly due to the Illinois EPA is trying to make it an easy way for them to determine whether the best management practices for limiting PFAS loads to the treatment plant are working. So they make us anything that's detected those 40 chemicals, do a sum, report that. Unfortunately, different PFAS chemicals have different toxicity levels. So the number is sort of meaningless. Plus, a lot of the public that's following this is used to the 4 part per trillion limit in water. So when they start to see a larger number of biosolids, we're under the opinion that they're going to have a lot of concerns being raised in the city. And then there's also some states are starting to implement a PFAS biosolids plant application ban. 2 states have already implemented it, Maine and Connecticut, and several others, including New York, Massachusetts, Colorado, are considering a ban on PFAS land application biosolids. So we have to keep an eye on that, and that could significantly drive up the cost. For
Elsewhere, some farmers are also resisting land application.
Yeah, a few of them.
So then where does it go?
A landfill.
Oh.
And those will actually end up filling up. There's a lot of work being done right now on technologies to eliminate PFAS, but none of them up to scale. There's a couple pilots. The only promising ones are right now gasification and pyrolysis, but then there's the air quality. So there's been certain studies that suggest that you're just burning it and it gets into the air and it's not really getting rid of it. Unfortunately, in wastewater, it's very hard to get rid of PFAS. Water's sort of easy. It's a very clean matrix. You can do granule activated carbon, you can do ion exchange, reverse osmosis, but in wastewater, sort of a dirty matrix. So there's a lot of things going on. It's very difficult. So PFAS, depending on the PFAS chemicals, partition into different phases. Some partition into the solids phase, some partition into the liquid phase, and go out into the river. Any questions on the regulatory update?
If you control it on the inbound water, how does it appear in the outbound water?
We receive it. We're sort of passive receivers from any industry. I mean, PFAS is ubiquitous in the environment. It's in everything from Scotchgard carpeting to your clothes to cosmetics is a big source. It's actually one of the largest sources. Lead and also food packaging. It's very, very unique because it has a oil and water resistant properties to it. So it's used in a lot of food packaging inside pizza boxes, microwave popcorn bags. It's pretty much everywhere. It was a chemical that was developed in the 1940s, right after World War II. The first item was probably Teflon pans. You'll notice it. So we can't really control what's coming in. But one of our new requirements in our permit will be to work with identify industries that could potentially be sending it to us and work with them to develop best management practices, alternate sources of PFAS.
But they're not putting PFAS into popcorn bags anymore, are they?
We can't manufacture PFAS in the United States anymore, but you can still import it. And there's a lot of PFAS in things like the rollers and conveyor belts and food packaging plants that sort of contaminate that. It's in all your fire resistant clothing. It's in carpets, Scotchgard. It's PFAS.
Your towel, even the towel that we use.
Yep.
That's all.
So that's one of the things we were following right now. Any questions on that? Got a neat little graphics of PFAS. Largest one is food packaging. To the Page Water Commission activity report. Their big 2 items are the Waterlink project, a 30-mile extension that will be extending to Page Water Commission to Montgomery, Oswego, and Yorkville. You'll probably see that they've started construction on Wood Road to south of 75th, several hundred feet into that project, 72-inch steel casing pipe going in. And the other project, and that will be close from 75th to 83rd Street, probably full closure until spring of this year. And then that project's going to run down to just past 95th Street, that's Arc Point West to Frontier Sports Park. And the other one is the alternate water supply. They've been doing some work at finding an alternate water source from the Page Water Commission. So they identified, that's why the Page Water Commission purchased a piece of property up in Northbrook. The plan is to put a crib outside of Glencoe in Lake Michigan, pump station to the treatment plant in Northbrook, and then turn south back down connected to the Page Water Commission. It's still in the design phase.
Because Water Commission is extending the boundary beyond Page County.
Yes.
Talk about potentially partnering with, what I think it's the Northwest Suburban Joint Action Water Agency as well.
Or suburban municipal job.
Yeah, Schaumburg, Hanover Park, a lot of
That would be
those.
like an interconnect along with potentially keeping our Lexington Station link that would provide BWC's two alternate support sources in case anything ever happened.
There is some report about Page Water Commission trying to build a facility somewhere in the northern suburb and
Northbrook.
So how far have they reached in that?
They're just in the concept of it. I think in the packet, you'll see the potential route of the piping and stuff, the potential interconnects between NSM, Jawa, and Chicago.
So at our last meeting, it sounded like that was, part of that might be a little bit of a negotiation tactic.
Correct.
Is that still the sense, or is this like, I mean, you guys are a lot closer to it than I think we are. Like, what's the likelihood that this actually happens? Do you think?
I do feel, personally, I feel as a negotiation strategy. I don't think there's a lot of barriers that have to be overcome before whatever go into really effect.
I've heard that the biggest check that the city of Chicago cashes every month is DuPage Water Commission's purchase water check. So to lose them as a customer would be pretty impactful to Chicago's bottom line.
Any update on that negotiation?
Not really. I think we just signed a new contract for, I think it was 15 years. So, to Brian's point though, there's a horizon that we need to plan for, and DuPage Water Commission certainly doing their due diligence by purchasing this land and, sort of trying to build a business case and see if one's there, maybe build and incorporate some stakeholders to see if this would work. Look, I don't know that we're under any illusion that it's going to be getting any cheaper, the cost of purchased water, as a lot of the assets that the city of Chicago has age out and need to be maintained and replaced. And so doing that sort of cost benefit analysis, I think, is probably also going on at this point as well. So
like Chicago Bears moving to Arlington Heights.
Exactly.
Indiana.
Or Indiana, yeah.
Or Indiana, yeah.
And one of the final reports we have is for the Springbrook CIP program, where we did a facility plan 2021, identified an asset evaluation along with 5, 10, and 20-year CIP budgeting projections. This is mainly due to, all these capital projects are mainly due to aging infrastructure. A lot of the equipment in Springbrook has been there since it was originally built in 1970s. Regulatory compliance with phosphorus regulations, and then also capacity. The last major capacity improvement at Springbrook was done in 1999. So we've done a lot of growth in the city since then. So the treatment plant is actually overloaded in several key areas. So we have projects going in various stages. We are concluding our influent pump station, which will be done finished date of April 10th currently. Our biosolids holding tank has a substantial completion date of November of this year, which we're actually going to be ahead of schedule. It should be potentially operational by mid to late summer. And we are working on our RAS project, our salt plant, which substantial completion will be November of this year. And finally, we're starting construction on our South Plant improvements, which is a $9.3 million project. And then we're in design engineering for our North Plant improvements. So, a lot going on.
Did we skip over the system performance?
No. No, it's next.
Oh, sorry. Off on the-
But if there's no questions on Springbrook, we can go to that. Not really too much to add here, especially given sort of where we're at in the year. Last year saw a pretty high number of distribution leaks. So to our point earlier about needing to invest in water main, our breaks last year, I think we're up at 160 or so. So the good news is that a lot of the leaks that we're finding seem to be, we're able to respond to them a lot quicker and keep a pretty good handle on a lot of them on the water. But you'll see that reflected in the SADI report. Our water consumption for the year was actually pretty flat. It started to actually level off a little bit. You can see over the course of the last few years a very gentle downward slope in our purchased water and how much water the city is consuming. A lot of the new construction is low flow toilets. People are just being more, much more aware of how they're using the resource and everything. And so water consumption is really pretty flat year over year. I'd like to sort of move on really quickly, if I can, to the non-revenue water report. So a little bit of background on this. This is our non-revenue water. So basically we are purchasing water from the DuPage Water Commission. And then we turn around and sell that water to the customers of Naperville. In a perfect world, we would make back in revenue everything that we had to buy from the DuPage Water Commission. But in reality, that's obviously not the case. And sometimes that's okay, right? We're not metering every last single drop of water that goes out. I'll give you a good example. We're not gonna meter a fire hydrant that the fire department needs to tap onto for training purposes. That's water that we, the city, have purchased, but we're not seeing any money recouped for that. We're required to do a report annually. It's called the LMO2 report. It's required by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources because we are a Lake Michigan water customer. It covers a water year, which runs from October 1st to September 30th of each year. For this year, our non-revenue water came in at, I believe, 3.3%, which is really quite good. This looks at all things, like I said, a myriad of numbers. The first number that you sort of got to start with is how much water am I importing on a given year? We took in a little over 5 billion gallons of water from DuPage Water Commission last year. We then account for all of sort of the permitted uses. Flushing. We have to flush our water mains periodically to make sure that the chlorine residuals in that pipe stay elevated. That is not being fed through a meter. We're not recouping that cost, but we need to do that for system reliability and public health reasons. So we're losing water that way. We're losing water for main breaks. We're also losing water. Old or leaky meters, right? A lot of the meters that we had in place for a long time were of the mechanical variety. And as those meters got old, they start registering incorrect numbers. And unfortunately, they never register high. They always register low. So I think a lot of our non-revenue water was a result of old sort of mechanical meters that are being replaced now with magnetic meters. We've done a really good job of sort of spooling up our meter replacement, I would say since 2016, not only to support the AMI project that we completed a few years ago. But in an effort to get a handle on our non-revenue water, realizing that Lake Michigan is a resource that we don't really want to squander. And honestly, if it's anything over 10%, we've got to submit an action plan to the DNR telling them how we're going to try and get it under 10%. And personally didn't like doing those too much. So also a strategic goal at the city council level to sort of really get a handle on our non-revenue water. So you'll notice in the memo though that our last 2 years have been pretty significantly better. Still are doing 2 leak detection surveys a year. So that is where we are hiring a consultant to come in with acoustic sounding devices and listen to every single valve and hydrant that we have in the city, listening for water main breaks that might not be surfacing or called in, which is great. So overall, very good news to report on the non-revenue water side. To sort of don't see any reason why we're not going to be able to keep that up, especially as we start getting ramping up with our water main replacement too. So
we can see 2 spikes, one in April and another in October. Is there any reason for that?
yes, there is, and those are fat fingers. I believe the October one was an incorrect date associated with the turn on and turn off of a main break. And the April one was an extra digit on the estimated water loss. So as opposed to 20,000, I think it's at 200,000. So those have been corrected in the system since then, but we didn't get a chance to update the graphic for the meeting.
It won't look as good, I mean, as bad as, no, okay.
For the numbers in the upper right, are those misreported then too?
I don't, they would be accounted for in the water main break leak water loss number. The auto flusher number should be acceptable, yes. As that's under operations and maintenance, so the dark blue line on the bottom.
But the water main break one, the 100 million gallons, that's not correct.
Correct.
It was, that's a really expensive.
Yes. I actually just ran the numbers. We just got our updated billing for January and we lost about 2 million gallons of water in January, based on what we purchased from DWC. So 2 million gallons of water lost in January. For reference, we purchased 5 billion gallons in the entirety of 2025. So as a percentage, January is continuing the trend of really, really low non-revenue water.
We usually see an increase in water main breaks in the winter time because of the freeze thaw cycle of the ground, the movement causes the main breaks.
Yep. Well, that's about, Mayor, I'm actually, I think, a few slides ahead of you. These are still the performance reports. I don't know that I had any graphics for the
So moving.
annual water loss. Yeah, these are still the performance reports.
Sure.
And then obviously the non-revenue water report.
Right.
Yep.
Any other items?
Can you go back to the bar chart thing?
To which one?
Yes, right. Oh, the previous one, yes, yeah. Although it doesn't appear that clearly, we can see blue bar represents the rain event, right? Precipitation. And the gray, which we cannot see clearly, it's an immediate response in terms of influence to the treatment plant, right?
Mhm.
So immediate spike there indicates that there is a lot of what do you call
Inflow.
inflow.
Yep.
And I can see in the month of September, a little bit ahead of September, in the gray bar and blue bar, there is a little space. That tells me that the inflow comes a little delayed, so it must be more on the upstream side of the metering point.
So it takes time to flow through and reach. Have you given any thought on that we can go upstream, identify those areas and address cross connections or illegal connections?
Yeah, we're sort of doing that already, I think, but with a system the size of ours, I mean, we're looking at 600 to 630 miles of sanitary sewer. We can't get everywhere at all times. So what we've been doing is we have a system of, I don't know, I would say maybe 20 permanent flow meters on the sanitary side of things that give us a constant 24/7 picture of where we're seeing high flows and correlating that to wet weather events. We then also have the ability to put in temporary flow meters in smaller sanitary basins to look for just what you're saying, look for specific I&I and where that might be occurring. We do that to inform our capital program for lining not only of the gravity pipe, but also any grouting on the surface side of things.
Well, lining will help in infiltration,
Correct.
but not inflow. For
Correct.
inflow, you have to probably do smoke testing.
Yes.
Correct. And I don't know that we've done smoke testing now for a few years. We have increased our budget slightly. We found that when we do smoke test, that a lot of the problems exist on the private side.
That's true.
And we are not able to obviously do that. But what we've done is because we're getting rid of a lot of the lead service line, we're taking a lot of the money that was budgeted for our lead service line rebate program and reallocating those dollars to help fund improvements on the private side sanitary to help address that inflow problem.
I mean, all published studies say that 80% of the I&I originates from
Yes.
private sector.
Yeah. Yep. We're doing all we.
Cross connection between sanitary and storm sewer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one of the big reasons for smoke testing, to identify those illegal connections.
Right.
But it also identifies defective manholes and other things, and pipes that we need to correct. And the approach has been go basin by basin, because if you don't go one basin at a time, the groundwater is just going to seek a higher level. You're still going to get that inflow. So we're doing everything from one basin at a time to, we're even lining laterals to people's houses. Because we find a lot of the leak inflow will come between the sanitary sewer and the private side of the house.
I know city of Naperville had that private sector I&I control program. That has been going on for last 20 years, I believe. Right. We've spent quite a bit on that.
Okay, motion to accept the water reports.
Accept them. Second.
I second it.
Abbas, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion to adjourn.
You.
To adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I don't know. Matt. Nice to meet you. Oh, really? You've been, I think, I remember right, your second term. Oh, I didn't know you were almost done. Anyway. Gotta ask for a third one.